Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. I'm your co-host, Tim Walcott. I'm here with my other host, Tyler Paterson.
Hello,
We are
everybody.
here. We are here for episode 62 with Andrew Coates, personal trainer extraordinaire out of Edmonton. And he's been in the industry for 10 years, coming up very closely to his 10-year anniversary, and has over 16,000 personal training hours. We're really honored to have you on the show, Andrew. I've wanted to have you on the show and have a conversation for quite a while now. So thanks for coming on. Tell our audience about you, and if you could go into your humble beginnings 10 years ago, how you kind of got started, which I'm sure things were quite different.
All right. A little bit about me. So yeah, like you said, 10 years. First 6.5 were very much head down, commercial gym, monster hours, without any sort of like broader, brand or anything. Not much on social media aside from like just a lot of Facebook activity.
Yeah.
And then I'll circle back around. And then I started traveling to conferences, met a lot of the industry people, and that quickly led to my friend and I starting a podcast over 3 years ago. Originally the Fitness Devil with my friend Dean Guido, and more recently his wife's having a baby, so it's just mine now. We branded to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast. So that's a lot of fun. I do that every week. And then on top of that, a couple of years ago, I was asked through my connections to start writing for Nation, which, that was one of my Bibles, one of my main resources, reading people like Tony Gentlecore, who just happened to be one of my last guests on the podcast, Nick Tuminello, Ben Bruno, on, right? So it's something I take a great deal of pride in. Occasionally you get someone who like poo-poos all over it. It's like, I don't know. It's like one of the big websites for a lot of educational stuff, and it's still amazing. So I love it. I also write for True Coach, which is the online training platform that I also use as a coach. So I like writing career article stuff. So it doesn't play well on my website, doesn't go on T Nation. So I'm like, well, let's have a fun place to put it. And then True Coach is it. I co-own and organize a fitness conference here in Edmonton. We had to postpone it this year, COVID being the kind of pain in the ass it was. So me, Dean Somerset, and we both contract at Evolve Strength. So the owner of Evolve Strength is our third partner. And last year we had Lee Boyce, Dean Somerset himself presented. We had Greg Knuckles up here, Lee Peel, Megan Calloway, and a few more speakers. So the hope is in 2021 we'll be able to bring it back. Right? We had a great lineup this year. We weren't able to pull it off. Oh well. And more recently, I've never taken social media growth very seriously until maybe about a year ago. So I've been having fun with my Instagram. And just before getting on air, I just had Mike Isertel, who's a friend of mine from the industry, just share something on his wall. And he's got 130,000 followers. So all of a sudden, boom, big dump in new followers. He does this once in a while. So I've had fun with it, but it's a fun content creation vehicle. You'll get a lot of people in the industry who, again, they don't take social media following very seriously. But I kind of think that attitude is sometimes born of an inability to prioritize or do it consistently, where it's like sour grapes. Oh, well, I can't grow a following, therefore it doesn't matter. People do, as stupid as this crap is, it's like, should a trainer be in shape or not? Okay, we know the argument about it shouldn't matter about someone's qualifications, but we still have to face the human psychology reality of the innate judgmental first impression. And someone sees someone with 10,000 followers versus 400 followers, there's a validity to the 10,000 followers. There's a validity to someone who has, is whatever fit definition, a strong powerlifting coach or a jack bodybuilding coach or, et cetera, a very, very flexible yogi. So, it's naive to dismiss that as not being important. So I've actually had a lot of fun with social media brand growth and seeing what works and what doesn't. And a lot of it's just about content creation and writing and whatnot. But you asked, the humble beginnings. I started a decade ago. I was 32 and I've got a Bachelor of Commerce degree. I actually don't have a formal exercise science degree or nutrition. It's actually business, but self-taught, reading everything I could get my hands on, going to seminars, you name it, articles, courses, books. And I was recruited off a gym floor that I worked out at. I've been a fitness enthusiast for a long time. And at first I was like petrified of it. The previous career, I was in the casino industry of all things, dealing and managing poker in a poker room. Hated that as time went on. It can be a very toxic environment. And I was looking for something. And so I kept getting bothered to come be a trainer. And my first attitude was, no, that's that's more about being able to sell than actually knowing how to train. So I kept saying no. And finally, a pal of mine pushed me. I was like, all right, fine, I'll give it a shot. Worked out pretty well. I got busy fast, got good at the referral side of business, and gained a lot of experience very quickly. It's still one of the best ways to learn, as long as you're not a complete imbecile with no concept of what you're doing and getting people hurt. But yeah, like getting a lot of experience is essential, and it just worked out over time. I wasn't this gung-ho, passionate young guy who entered the industry at 20. I fell into it, and I found a passion within what I was doing versus jumping in really passionate, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's relatable to a lot of trainers who've entered the industry knowing that was what they wanted to do right out of high school or college or university. But if anyone's read the book So Good They Can't Ignore You by Cal Newport, he kind of talks about this in great detail, to where the advice of following your passion may not be the best advice, and it might make more sense to find a passion within what you're doing, within what your skill set actually is, right? Because there's a lot of passions that won't pay you a goddamn dollar.
True. Yeah, that's interesting, eh? Like, I know that's why I always like hearing people's stories of how they got into it, because everyone's seems to have, I mean, regardless of any industry, everyone's story is kind of interesting. Their reasoning of how they got into it, yours being sort of an accident, I suppose. With going back to like the social media thing and your like recent interest with it, that's in the last year where you're like, hey, I realize that this matters, and me ignoring it is naive. That's in like the last year.
Yeah.
Is that what you said?
Well,
Yes.
I think I didn't find a consistent way to approach Instagram. So one of the things I've been doing is I like writing, and sometimes just taking those thoughts that we have every day.
Yeah.
I always encourage anyone who's trying to create more content. I almost hate that word. It is what it is.
Right.
If you're trying to create more, then you need to have like either a digital notebook. If I use an iPad when I'm training clients. If someone says something, I'll write it down. I did that yesterday. I turned into one of those, I punched into Twitter, I cut it out, shared on Instagram. Those are crazy popular, right? You see them all over Instagram. And that quote from a client and my response to it turned out to get shared very, very wildly, because it was a really relatable sentiment that trainers thought was really cool. And clients were like, yeah, I've said that to my trainer. They've tagged in their trainers or whatnot. So it becomes playing with, you want to be, I don't want to say this.
Relatable? Like, is it like people have to feel it? Like, it's like, if they're going to share it, they have to be like, yeah, I get that.
Yeah, that's a part of it, but it's about every aspect of your business. If you want to be successful as a personal trainer, you have to reach people. You have to sell. You have to develop relationships where people want to spend time with you. You have to have create such a good experience they want to stay. So it becomes learning a lot of these skills, and communication is a critical skill. So it's very naive for a trainer to think, oh, well, I'm not a writer, or I don't sell. Everything you're trying to convince a client to do they don't want to do is selling someone. Not to mention, you need to be able to sell to provide for yourself, to earn a living. There's nothing dishonorable about getting paid very well to be a personal trainer. If anything, that's a big piece of the puzzle. I also find it incredibly fulfilling, and I sleep great at night knowing the way I can affect people's lives. I absolutely love what I get to do. I give up a lot of my free time doing things like the podcast doesn't pay me anything. All the social media stuff doesn't pay me anything directly. Sure, it's a brand growth vehicle, but or I'm reading, textbooks on training and nutrition, right? And instead of sitting and playing video games all the time. So I'm one of those classic trainers who's actually kind of awful at finding hobbies and pursuits outside of my career. But I think it's naive to just dismiss, social media, because more and more our world is going online. Obviously this year was fucked up by global pandemic and all these governments' response to it. So we have all this fear, people, scared to go to gyms. We now kind of have the data knowing that's pretty safe, but gyms are still closed in California. Friends of mine like Robert Linkle and Chad Landers are still fighting that battle. And more we're seeing online training. And how do you reach people who are I'm in Edmonton, Alberta. How do I reach someone who's in Kansas or California? Probably through, social media or other brand vehicles. Again, I'm on T-Nation, I'm on True Coach, so people can find me on there, but they still have to have a way to connect with me. I think an email list is still probably the smartest thing you can do, because your social media platform, that stuff can all go away, right? who knows? I mean, Instagram might all of a sudden become obsolete because TikTok does such a goddamn good job of replacing it. I know this is not going to happen or likely, but MySpace was a big thing. And anyone who blew up MySpace a long time ago, I hope you guys are old enough for MySpace.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
All of a sudden now Facebook's this big thing, but younger generations aren't going on to Facebook the way that, my generation used it. And then you have Snapchat, you have Instagram, you have TikTok, which all have similarities. Instagram's been pretty smart at grabbing the features of the other competitors to kind of stave them off.
Yeah.
But there's going to come a point where if your brand is on Facebook or your brand is on Instagram, maybe, who knows where we are in 10, 15, 20 years from now, whether or not the place you built your brand is viable. So I think the skill is being able to create ideas, share them, articulately share them in such a way that they're engaging, that more people find out about who you are, which just gives you more opportunities with your career. And it's, while the underlying thing is helping the end client and being paid to work with clients, some people want to grow beyond that and do educational courses. My friend Megan Calloway, she sells her Ultimate Pull-Up program, Ultimate Landmine program, so on and so forth. She's doing less in-person coaching, getting paid more and doing more online work because that's something she's really passionate about. And that happened because she's been able to grow her Instagram following very aggressively. And she recently wrote an article about how she reached 50,000 followers and articulated a lot of the what and why of how she did it, but also the benefits of why having that brand growth actually benefited her. And that can translate into speaking engagements. It can translate to Tim, you and I are connected through social media. So, that's why I'm sitting here on this podcast having a conversation. It's I think naive to dismiss it. You may be able to function short term without any real social media presence whatsoever. And I don't begrudge anyone who decides, hey, I don't want to do it, but there's a lot of things you're leaving on the table that you can't do as well if you don't at least have social media. I don't think social media is the be all end all. Again, I think building an email list is a very smart idea. And I think being robust in the different things you have, again, I have a podcast, but I don't have much of a YouTube channel. I never dabble in because you can't do everything. So, just choosing surgically what you're probably really good at and what you enjoy, you find fulfilling, you don't find emotionally draining. I think I would find tailoring, editing, and really curating YouTube would be exhausting and not something I'd enjoy. Whereas I find the podcast and the conversations really fun, really easygoing. I'm enriched by them. I've made good friends. I don't know if you guys know who Matthew Ibrahim is.
No.
Well, I'm saying right now, go follow the guy. He's putting out a lot of really great training information. He's one of the nicest guys in our industry. He's in Boston. He's got a whole bunch of stuff behind him, mentored other trainers. He's director of a business. He's also now a T-Nation guy. We've just collaborated on an article after just bouncing a few messages, knowing who each other were, but then got him on the podcast. We became like instant friends, got along super well, great rapport. And we chat all the time. We're bouncing ideas off each other, supporting each other. And he's a kindred spirit, someone who is kind of in the same place as I am and growing. And finding people like that, where you are versus trying to, get Eric Cressy's attention or John Berardi or some of the guys who they're really so established now, they're actually really inaccessible. I mean, Cressy is working with the New York Yankees, right? And Berardi's sort of retired and stepped away from PN for the most part and pursuing other projects. So they're not the guys you're going to be rubbing shoulders with. Instead, don't ignore the people who are where you are or your supporters, like passionate up-and-coming trainers who are really engaged in sharing your social media, because those are the people that might shoot up like crazy. I was just talking to Maddie Fusaro on my podcast. Like I recorded today. It'll be out next week. Depends on when people are listening to this. And Maddie was detailing this 19-year-old kid who used to message him. Maddie's been on YouTube for a long time. A strong YouTube presence now translating into other things. And this young man's name is Christian Guzman. So, and then you guys know who Christian Guzman is, right?
Of course. I know Matty Fusaro as well.
Okay, Maddie's great. And I'm not talking about for, baseball fans, the Christian Guzman who was like the Minnesota Twins shortstop. This is it.
You're talking about Alpha Elite Christian Guzman.
That reference.
Yeah.
If you don't, I apologize terribly, sincerely for boring you. But Christian, if anyone knows who he is, he's driving around in McLarens and Lambos and all this crap. Now that stuff may be a bit ostentatious for some, but he's involved in all these businesses, his own gym, and he's a really brilliant young entrepreneur. Anyway, Maddie was really nice, this 19-year-old kid who was like messaging him, inspired by him. And guess what? They have a great relation to this day. So don't discount where some of the people who are engaged with you are going, even if they haven't established themselves as sort of a brand name yet. And people can kind of get snobby where you might notice people on your social media feed will only share Jordan Syatt stuff. Now, Jordan I love, I'll share Jordan stuff because it's good. Or they'll only share people who have like 100,000 plus followers. Just recently, I took 10 of my friends who had less than 10,000 followers, 9 of them, because only 9 fit in the post. And I shared them with my following because I think they're really, really good people. They're consistent content creators. I found that their content's engaging, and each one of them gained well over 100 followers just from my post. And they're all like super blown away and excited, but they're people who aren't household names yet, who I really believe that everybody should know about. One was actually Tom Venuto. He just happened to be under 10,000. If anyone hasn't read, what's it, Burn the Fat, Feed the Muscle, Tom's an old school legend in our world. Just didn't grow his Instagram past that point. So
That's cool.
So yeah, I'm a big believer in also abundance mindset and sharing and highlighting the other great people in our industry, because people have been really kind and awesome to me. And it's one of the reasons why my social media brand is growing, is because of all the sharing and interconnectivity with, again, I mentioned Mike Isertel earlier, or a Jordan Syatt, 2 monster accounts who have frequently shared my things on their feed. I've got a lot of followers from that. Anyway, I wandered a little far afield, from the original question, but
That's okay.
That's how this podcast goes.
I was going to ask you and I think you kind of touched on it actually right at the start there, where it's like, do you think a lot of people like content creation and maybe this is why you like it, like building your social media, is like, do you think it's it's an exercise in discipline almost, like, and that's why people actually excuse and be like, oh no, it's just dumb. And it's like, no, you just don't have the discipline to consistently do something that is going to be a chore sometimes.
Absolutely. I'll give you an analogy with it. That audiobooks have really blown up in the industry, and I love listening to audiobooks. I listen to them on 2 times speed. You can build up to that while I'm driving, while I'm cooking, habit stacking. So I usually consume about 80 books a year. I also like reading physical books. I save that for books on writing or technical training stuff. And you'll see Mark Fisher, Eric Cressy, Luca Hocevar will post their lists of books, prolific readers. And then there's always a few people who like have to shit on audiobooks. Oh, it's not,
Right.
paint it the same way, blah, blah, blah. And like some decent, good people are doing it. But there's usually a few people, and they come up with the argument, well, you can't absorb it the same way as, sitting down and reading a book. And what's embedded in that is most of the time really this discomfort with the fact that they're not reading as much as they know they should or would benefit from. So therefore, in order to calm the discomfort with something being shown to them that makes them feel crappy about their own efforts, they got this argument to shoot down. It's the same thing as the person who's on a diet in an office who is working out, and all of a sudden the other coworkers are bringing around donuts and sabotaging them because it's a really nasty reminder that makes people feel very inadequate about their own, I'm going to say it, laziness and lack of effort. But going back to what you're asking about with discipline, yeah, it becomes the discipline to, if you're going to post daily, which I do, is to share ideas daily. And you have to build in systems, like I said, about keeping notes. If you think of something great, I was sitting down with my girlfriend last night and she said 2 things. I'm just like, that is so fucking brilliant. I literally stopped her and I'm like, here, let me write this down. And she loves it if I like take something that we're talking about and then share it on social media. And I can't count the number of times, a client has said something or sparked a discussion. I'm like, here, let me write that down. And then they see, because they're following, that I've shared whatever we were talking about, and they love it. So it's a cool way to like just that little bit of extra, value
Buy-in, yeah.
to the individual client.
Yeah.
But it sometimes sparks some really cool ideas. And I promise you, if you don't write them down when you think of it, you will fucking forget. And then you're gonna, oh shit, what the hell was that? So that's probably one of the best ways to just create ideas. And sometimes it can lead to, how often have you been in the shower and just thought of something and like all of a sudden, poof, hey, there's an idea for an article. I've gotten lots of teenage articles simply thinking in the shower.
Yeah. Well, I got to commend you for your Instagram, Andrew, like going on this topic that we're talking about. When I first added you to do my research for this podcast, you messaged me saying, "Hey, I hope your business has been going well." And I figured you knew like you were going to come on this podcast. And then I said, "Yeah, like I can't wait to talk about you on the podcast." And I just want to commend you for you building a community. I think that might be one of the secrets, like not secrets, sorry, one of your successes with this Instagram growth is you're actually building a community that like wants to engage. So your stories are really consistent and your stories like really get people engaged. And like I was actually going to make reference to the time where you posted your 9 friends there to like just drum up some, you're really going to appreciate this guy if you have questions about this. Like I think that might be one of the keys to like getting your Instagram following a little bit higher. So I got to commend you for that for sure. So I think it has to be, it'll get you thinking all day about what you want to post. I actually think it makes you a little bit more prolific in everything. So over the time I've had Instagram, like I feel like my captions are getting better just because I'm actively thinking about trying to create some content that actually has value. And it usually does come from conversations with clients. So I think it's a good idea to definitely try to make a system, like you were saying, to write down or think about or write things that other people would relate to. Because if this person had that question, other people probably have the same question as well. And it'll get people to engage, and other people will share because they're like, yeah, like I had this thought too, or this answers a question that I've had. So I got to commend you for your efforts because your Instagram is quite appealing.
I'll use an example in talking with Jordan Side about this. Jordan has a couple of podcasts. He's got his How to Be a Personal Trainer with Mike Vacanti. I like it. It's one of my favorites to listen to. But he also has his mini podcast, which is him taking coaches on from his inner circle or people from the mentorship group, and they just have a call and a conversation. And then he was doing this, and then they were so good and insightful, he turned them into recordings that were shareable, that engage other people who realize, wait a minute, I have those same questions, I have those same concerns. And also, it's a great way to use his time to, create more shareable content. And he learned from Gary Vaynerchuk. I learned some. He actually downplays just how much he actually picked up from Gary, but it can't help but rub off on you as a content creator. And Jordan is someone who's grown a very large social media following from consistent content creation. He's also not famous because of social media or Gary. The guy's been training people since he was, in his teens, has had internships at Westside Barbell with Louis Simmons, Chrissy Sports Performance, and been a prolific article writer for a very long time before, and a very big email list before Instagram became a big blow up thing.
I remember watching that happen because I started following him right before that blow up, and then watching that happen and being like, I see what's happening. And then I remember him talking about it and being like, that was kind of cool to witness that in the moment, kind of seeing that because it was pretty quick, right? That was the whole like 3 times a day thing that Gary made him do, right?
Yep, exactly. And he turned around into the people like Carter Good was one of his, the people he was mentoring, Susan Niebergall, and there's many others. And a lot of them all saw their social media followings blow up really, really huge because they were early on to that. Infographic posting was one of the big ones. So what I also was going to say was, you look at someone like Jordan, and despite all the other things, if the first thing you see is that he's got over 600,000 followers, that is legitimizing in the eyes of a lot of people. So that has helped him, I'm sure, tremendously. And I'm not saying that someone who has, like I have 6,500 as the time of starting this, I mean, it's going to be more by the time I get off, just because Mike shared that post. It's going to be fun to see what the hell happens. But it can be really frustrating for someone who's, got 500, 800, 2,000 or whatever. But I promise you, if you do put the time and the effort into it, it will probably be slow going at first. You have to be consistent. You can't get discouraged. But the more people you have on there, the faster the growth will be. And it still does depend on good quality stuff. And then the other key is having relationships in the industry. If you have big accounts following you, who are your friends, engage with what you're doing, then if one of those shares something, then sure, people are going to find out about you, and it will grow and it will grow. But I still think the best way is to not focus on those big accounts. Let those things happen if they happen, but be engaged with the people who are where you are, people who have the same goals, and grow together. Right?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was going to use, going back to the reading thing, I was going to use reading actually when I asked you, where I was as an example of an act of discipline when it comes to that thing, because I think a lot of people are when I heard Jordan doing the posting 3 times a day thing, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, do you find it challenging to post every day? I think most people do. Like, maybe you don't, or maybe you find it, you're able to streamline it and refine your process maybe a little better. The fact you're taking notes, but
It's streamlined. At times, it used to feel more challenging. Now I find it a lot easier.
yeah,
At times early on, I found getting to the gym every day and the nutrition harder. Now it's routine and automatic many, many years later.
mm-hmm.
At first, I mean, how many reading as a habit? Sometimes it could be super challenging in the past, just getting started. Now it is a very routine thing that I crave versus watching television. So it's like any other habit formation. This is also critical to getting your clients to get more consistent at the gym and eat better. It underpins what we're doing. So yeah, it absolutely is. I find I enjoy it now, and I look forward to seeing how a post performs. And there are going to be some people who are listening who are going to be like, wow, this shit doesn't fucking matter. This is stupid crap. Well, my coaching and my clients comes first. My relationship with my girlfriend comes first. But I can still build in the time, as I've gotten better at it, to make sure I scribble down something. Creating a post on Twitter doesn't take me very long if I've got the idea. I'm constrained. I like the Twitter ones because me and Maddie were just talking about this, where you're constrained by the character count. So you have to be very, very thoughtful in your word choice, and it prevents you from getting too wordy. And you want to leave white space and not have one big chunk of a paragraph, because people just will pass on by. But like I said before, it is a good exercise in getting great at communicating. And I also think the editing process is important, because if you're interested in any sort of brand growth, I truly believe long form article writing still should be the underlying thing you're doing. And the key to writing, like, if you read books on writing, they will all tell you that nobody writes beautiful prose and just comes out perfect. Even the best writers, their first drafts are terrible. It's the editing process, the merciless editing process, that actually will make you into a great writer of the end product. I'm sure that King's writing, the first draft is god awfully bad. Maybe after many years of doing it, it's a bit more instinctive, but like I said, editing is key.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you, like, you as a big reader or audiobook listener, has that made you a better writer? I assume it would.
It invariably does. So, I mean, I think that physical reading will probably be a little bit better if seeing the words on a page in terms of turning around to writing. I do believe that. But again, if you're listening to and absorbing audio or people talking, you can't help but listen to an articulate speaker. Again, I mentioned Mike Isertel. Mike is very articulate, very intelligent, very funny. And just absorbing the way he talks. I mean, number one, you're like, fuck, I wish I could sound like that. I wish I was that funny just the way I said normal shit.
And talk that fast.
Yeah. Or, someone like John Romanello, who's a very good writer. He's one of the kind of go-to writing resources in our world. You listen to John, and John is a very articulate speaker. I think the art of learning how to speak in front of an audience is still a different thing, but I think they run kind of concurrently. But I think written, print word, if you absorb that stuff, you cannot help but enhance your vocabulary. Your writing style is going to be your own, but it'll be enhanced by being exposed to different things. And it's not just reading. I love shitting on Mark Manson's
Subtle Art.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. I mean, if you've got to name your book with swearing in the title,
I hate that title. I've said that. Yeah.
It's also smart marketing, so you have to.
Yeah.
I think it's actually a dreadful book. It's actually, what do they call it? It's the twilight of the self-help genre.
I remember your Facebook post about it. You got a lot of engagement on that. That was a good move, man. Make a controversial Facebook post.
I'm not fucking with that shit. But at the same time, if it is a gateway into getting people to read better quality stuff, maybe it's some of Ryan Holiday's philosophy, or maybe it's Seth Godin's work, or I'm not a big Gladwell fan. I like one of his books. I think Gladwell is highly overrated, but Simon Sinek. There's a long list of these really good authors. Cal Newport, I absolutely love his writing. I'll read virtually anything he does. Except that
he's the deep work guy.
He's the deep work guy. Excellent. One of my favorites.
Okay, I haven't read it. Yeah, I've heard good things.
I lose my train of thought there for a second. I like making fun of certain things. It's like making fun of Instagram influencers. It's like, okay, but there's a point. If you're complaining about Instagram influencers and what they're doing, you're completely missing the point of taking complete ownership and control over being way better at your message, engaging your audience, growing your audience. I don't complain about if I see some girl, 100,000 followers or 1,000,000 followers, and she's demonstrating, body weight BOSU bullshit, and she's saying that this is what grew her glutes, which are either built by heavy squatting and deadlifting, or she has ass implants or fat injections, whatever. Oh, complaining about that is a really stupid waste of time. It's low hanging fruit, and you can get a little bit of engagement in that negative echo chamber of, yeah, that, that sucks. Or maybe you could just look at, okay, what is this girl doing? How did she grow her following? Assuming she didn't buy it, there's that too. But she's engaging people. It's like the big diet gurus who sell books. I like making fun of, I had a video today on my Instagram story. I was walking through the bookstore and I went to the diet section. I called it the fiction section, right? And of course, I got a lot of messages. People think that shit's funny. Okay, it's a nice little joke. But at the end of the day, instead of complaining about it, why not do what Jordan Site's doing, or Spencer Nadolsky or Sohee Lee, and create a really world-class message? Hone your craft. Make sure you're well-educated, but great at delivering a message and engagement to an audience, so you grow something. So the people who are ready, because people crave easy. They want oversimplified solutions, quick fixes to complex problems. Obesity is a very complex problem. So if someone's going to promise them, like a book like Wheat Belly, right? I read that, believed that it was legit early in my career. Like, now I know it's complete fucking nonsense. You mature as a trainer. But that's a simple message that's really engaging. It's sold a lot. You get Dr. Jason Fung and his nonsense. Go be a doctor and then go write a nutrition book, and that's a good way to make a lot of money. But instead of complaining about these people, and I jokingly complain, be better at creating great messages and bringing in and reaching an audience. So that's one of the reasons why I think, hey, if you're going to complain about shit, go out and actually make the world better with a really good message. One of my biggest pet peeves is our industry complaining about things beyond their control. I find Instagram's pretty good. I find Facebook is a toxic wasteland of this crap. And there's a lot of people I like that I actually unfollow on Facebook. Still my friends, but I unfollow because they relentlessly talk about politics or complex and polarizing social issues, or vaccines. And I'll make it clear when I talk about vaccines. I mean, I don't have any kids. If I ever have kids, I'll vaccinate them. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, and I'm definitely not one of these people that thinks, hey, we should have a choice here, because then you get these blow-ups of measles. But someone listening now is going to be kind of irritated because they don't think that vaccines are okay. So I use that as an example. I'll pull you back in where I'm not qualified to talk about fucking vaccines. I'm not qualified to talk about the U.S. presidential election. I'm Canadian. I don't give a shit about it. And someone's going to be pissed off at that because it affects you. No. It's making your life miserable. You know what's making your life miserable? You choosing to give a shit about that crap. Yes, I know that there's potentially some stuff, human rights stuff that's going on. Yeah, like, I'm not saying that stuff, and I want to be careful treading around this. I'm not saying that stuff doesn't matter. But you spending your entire day arguing about it on social media and complaining about it on social media is not making the world better. It's doing nothing. It's making you miserable. And it is alienating you from the people that you profess you want to make their lives better, the potential clients who come to you for fitness and nutrition advice. And no one's under any obligation to drown themselves in all of the shit, the evil in the world. Instead, take that energy, go volunteer, go do something constructive, go donate your time and your money to something that you believe in, and maybe just grow a career to the point where you have the financial and the time resources to have a bigger impact in a positive way on the world. I hope my overall message comes through here, because people spend so much time immersing themselves in negative stimuli. And I'm sorry, politics and most of this social stuff is really, really negative. Media and social media are actually meant to engage you through negativity and make you unhappy. And then all of a sudden, 2 hours have passed of you arguing with people, you're arguing with friends, and what did that get you? That's 2 hours you could have been writing or creating or reading or spending time with someone that you really care about and enriching your own life. And I just don't think any of that stuff's fulfilling. I don't think it helps anyone's business. And I'll move on from this topic with one major point. If you take a look at almost anyone who is successful in the fitness industry, you will find it is almost entirely devoid of virtually any political or social discussion.
You should be too busy. You should be way too busy to complain about that stuff, post about it, argue with somebody. You should be too busy. Someone like Gabby Fundera, we just had on the podcast the last episode. She is the perfect example of not going to complain about stuff, not going to put anybody else down. She's too busy doing her own thing. actually bettering this world. So you got me fired up, Andrew. I couldn't agree more. You can ask Tim, like, if someone brings up politics, any sort of polarizing subject where like gun control or anything like that, where I don't really have an opinion on any of those because I just don't care. I'm too busy with helping people. My face just like glazes over and I kind of stare at them and they go, "You don't care?" I go, "No, I don't. I'm too busy helping people, trying to make a difference." You know, I'm a massage therapist and personal trainer, so I'm trying to make people's bodies as good as they want them, as efficient as they want them, as strong, as healthy. So I couldn't agree more. You shouldn't have time. People shouldn't have enough time to do this.
Gabby's wonderful. You know, she's part of Renaissance Periodization, and they're very thoughtful. Like Mike Isertel will usually make some sort of statement in the wake of something major going on, but he always takes his time. He never does anything reactionary. He's one of the most well thought out people, you know, if he has to address something specific. Otherwise, this stuff just isn't on Renaissance Periodization's brand or more most of its people. And again, I think that you can correlate very, very highly the amount that people engage in those type of discussions with their level of success in our world. And you said it, Ty, you know, if someone's arguing about this shit all the time on Facebook, I think they have a lot of time on their hands. They're either misusing it or they're not very busy. And I'm sorry, I can't be pulled into that stuff. So I personally choose to tune out that negative stimuli. And if someone is baiting me into trying to suggest that I'm supposed to, I'm sorry, like, no, I don't subscribe to that idea. You know, it goes back to Tim. You mentioned, you know, the reading habit, and if anyone's read the book, The Slight Edge, it talks about, you know, reading 10 pages a day. And I know that somebody, I feel it was Jordan Side, but somebody just posted the same sort of sentiment. It's a good habit to get into. It's like reading that 10 pages of good. I'm not talking about Anne Rice novels or Nora Roberts. If you enjoy that, fine too. But you know, get 10 pages of good literature that's somehow going to help you grow and be more successful. And instead of arguing on social media.
Yeah, I think
you should read 10 pages of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. You should read 10 pages of that every single day.
Once.
Oh, I think
sorry, go ahead. I'll say this about Mark. Mark, great. He's a great storyteller. He's an engaging writer, and while the title did have a lot to do with its success, it is a book that's very, very readable. And he turned around his second book, Everything is Fucked, is actually a much, much better book. It's less. I found that the first one was very, what I'm looking for, inauthentic. I found it was hypocritical. I found that the way he was telling these stories, it sounded like he really cared too much, and he was just bullshitting. But the second book, he comes into his own, and it's a good read. So again, I like having fun with it, and I understand its merits. I just personally think it's trash. Sorry.
Yeah, I read both the books too, and the second one, I couldn't agree more. The second one was he didn't rely on. It was almost gimmicky the amount that he swore in the first one, whereas the second one was actually thoughts, a different outlook that you should take on life, and it was actually quite nice compared to the first one for sure. So I agree with you there.
It's like listening to a really bad, unfunny comedian who then swears loudly. And in order to compensate for how unfunny they are, they get louder and more obnoxious. Like Gilbert Gottfried or Kathy Griffin's horrendous, or even Dane Cook, right? I'm sorry, these are not funny people. Who's the other one? The blonde girl. God, I can't remember. Shit. Anyway, they're terrible comedians. There's nothing funny about them. So they overcompensate by being really crude and loud and obnoxious and vulgar.
The shock value, trying to make up for the lack of creativity.
Vulgar humor, go back to old Eddie Murphy. That's funny shit.
Right. It's a good balance, right? On the reading note, what are you reading right now or / listening to?
I am listening to the book Breathe. I can't remember the author's name. I apologize. It's actually fantastic. I got it from my friend Sam Pogue. Can't stress it enough. I am reading The Ultimate Sales Letter, a physical copy of it. I'm trying to read more on sales copy and writing in general. I like that a lot. I'm partway through. I just started. I'll read several books at the same time. I nearly finished this one. I should recommend this to any coach. So it's Language of Coaching by Nick Winkelman. This thing is about internal versus external cueing. There's a lot more to it. Very science heavy, brilliant. It's changed the way I coach. And I can't remember the title. Shit, it's James Krieger and Mike Matthews' new book. And it's something about the science of training. It's a short little book. So it's just one of the ones I'm going to try to engage with. I don't know. I got a big table full of stuff open. I want to read this again, Influence by Robert Cialdini, but I keep starting other books. I think trainers who are actually trying to learn about sales. And guess what? Sales is important. You should learn this skill. Influence is probably the sales Bible. You should probably read that.
Have you read the Conscious Coaching by Brett?
Yep.
How is it? I just bought it.
Really good book. I met him, got to talk to him about it. I've got a copy here somewhere. And I actually think that's a good read for a lot of people.
Okay.
So here we go. Cool. Signed copy. For
Nice.
Unfortunately, audio, you can't see that. But so I got that. And I also have John Goodman's book, Getting Clients and Referrals. I'm actually featured in this book. I wrote a little 10-page portion of it. So that's kind of cool. So I actually want to read that one again real soon. So, I know I got a mountain of books. So it's, I got 80 of books.
What was the one there on sales?
So the Ultimate Sales Letter.
Okay.
I think I have it hidden.
Or you just mentioned it. Yeah.
It's Dan Kennedy. So I like some of his stuff. He's also got a really good one. It's his No BS series on time management. It's pretty ruthless stuff. So if you're struggling with management.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you is like, do you think, I know that you mentioned this earlier in the discussion, but like, in my personal experience, I had probably an average experience as far as like going through, maybe average isn't the right word, but maybe just like a moderate struggle as far as like, okay, how do I sell myself? But personally, when I talk to other trainers, that does seem to be a pretty pervasive issue, particularly when people don't have a sales background, don't have a background in retail, or don't have a background in the fitness industry. So if it's like all those three, usually they come in it and they're like, wait a minute, now I have to sell, but I'm also selling me, which is personal, and it seems to be like, it seems to be a struggle for a lot of people that get into the industry at the start. Not to say that I didn't. I just think mine, I did pick it up at one point. But I had a struggle just like anybody else did. But now I talk to other people, especially people that are just starting out. And that seems to be like almost every time where they're just like, now I have to like, I'm great at training, but how do I make money doing this? People need to pay me still. Was that challenging for you at the start as well?
Well, it sure was. So I have some thoughts on this that might be really helpful to anybody who's going through it. A lot of it's just your mindset. So if you truly believe you're great at training, then it all comes down to belief in yourself. It's also the attitude you take towards the sales process. If you're scared of selling, it's because you've made selling out to be this bad, unethical, or intimidating thing, right? And I think reading sales books is probably a really great idea just to kind of change your perspective. So first thought, one, if you don't get comfortable with the person in front of you selling to them, asking for their business, and you let them walk out the door, and I'm not talking about beating down legitimate objections, because if someone's got a lot of objections, I'm not going to push them. But if you're not able to confidently ask for the business, that person will at some point drive by a Globo gym. I said this recently on my podcast, and they will on impulse pop in because they're frustrated about their weight or their health or whatever is underlying emotion that's driving them to do this. And they're going to get sold by a front desk salesperson who is not going to be their trainer and assigned to, the first trainer that needs a client, or it might be the brand new trainer. It might be someone who's not qualified. It might be someone who's qualified. But you're rolling the dice, and maybe they have a bad experience, and maybe it's really a pivot point for their long-term health, whether or not they make a change that improves their quality of life and how long they live. And this, of course, affects their family and so many other things. So I don't want to put this heavy weight on your shoulders, but you are in a position to be able to, if you believe you're the best person for this potential client, to ask for the business with confidence because you're confident in your ability to help them. So you really got to overcome this fear of sales. One of the pieces of language I use all the time, and I like it, and I encourage you guys to share it, or use it word for word. Say to the person, I would love to have your business. Okay? That's how I ask for a sale. I would love to have your business. It's not going, hey, do you want to sign up with me? Or, like how people are just scared shitless of this. And then ask and then shut the fuck up. Just let them answer. Because if it's silent and you start talking and you get nervous, you're going to blow the sale. Don't talk yourself out of the sale. Present with confidence the skills that you have, and then ask for the business with confidence, and don't feel salesy. And once you've done it a few times, you're going to find that most people, if they're there because they were referred to you or they're serious, it's not going to get that hard. And once you've got a few under your belt, it just tends to flow. So a lot of it really is just having this attitude that you're not a used car salesman, you're not doing anything unethical, and there's nothing wrong. And people think about, well, oh, I'm charging X amount of money per hour. Most trainers probably, well, some trainers undercharge, and I know I do still undercharge my, what I'm worth per hour, but it still gets kind of expensive. I'll bring that. I lost my train of thought there for a second. You need to be confident in what your hour's worth is, and people will find ways to spend astonishing amounts of money on ridiculous crap. So feeling guilty about what people are spending their money on, that isn't really a good way to think about it. I used this example recently where, again, I used to work in the casino world. I've seen people walk into the poker room, dump $200 or $500 into chips, play aggressively, and walk out half an hour later, and come back 2 days later and come back a third time that week. Now, we're also talking about the complexities of gambling addiction. That's a whole different ballgame. But people will find things to spend their money on. And personal training is one of the things that, in terms of the value it creates for their life, the energy it gives them, the improvement in all qualities of their life and potentially their relationships, it is some of the best way that people can actually spend their money. And if you're in this business and you're passionate about it, you already know this. You have to get in touch with that thought. And then, again, confidently ask for the business. I have people who in their lifetimes have spent way over in the tens of thousands of dollars in training. And if you add that number up, that sounds astonishing. But then you add up the change in those clients who are in that category. I look at their quality of life and how their fitness journey has changed, having worked with me for 6, 8, 10 years. And I see remarkable, positive, long-term outcomes. And not one of them regrets for a second the investment in their health and the quality of life. They actually treasure it. And I have a lot of very close relationships. And you think about it, someone spent a lot of money on you and they start referring you business, that's a clear sign that they believe in you. That's where they spend their money. So I hope that stuff helps shape your philosophy when it comes to sales.
I would totally agree that it's a mindset thing. That makes a lot of sense, where it's like, it's kind of how you view yourself and how you view sales that will really like reflect in ultimately how you sell people or don't sell people.
Andrew, I feel like I'm in the best way possible. I feel like we should pay you, because I feel like this is a seminar right now. Like I'm staring into the camera, and if people are watching this, I apologize, because I'm probably just like drooling a little bit too. But I couldn't agree more. Geez, I'm gonna lose my train of thought too. But I just feel like I'm watching a seminar right now where you can't let like the imposter syndrome take over, and then you just can't ask someone to, because you're gonna make a change in their life. They're going to come in, lift some weights. It doesn't matter if they don't bench 350 or whatever it is. They're going to make a change in their life in some way. Like my clients have I celebrate small victories to the extent of, I didn't even think about getting on off the toilet. They just did it. Or they were carrying groceries in and they didn't, like, their shoulders didn't hurt, or they carried the whole thing and weren't winded going up the stairs. Like these little victories that, like, they add up over time. And like you said, people will pay way more money for way dumber shit, or their quality of life goes through the roof and they didn't even realize. And you're the person that did it for them. Sorry, did it with them.
You're giving those people back something that, if someone had trouble getting up and down from the toilet, you give them that back again, that's priceless. So if anyone follows my social media, you may have seen me post up about my client, Larry. Now, everybody loves Larry. He's 70. This man, he's this grizzled old guy. He's pretty stout and he's strong. So he moves better than most people half his age. I've got a safety bar squatting 2 plates aside. He wouldn't let me post the video, but he deadlifted on a trap bar 403 pounds for just one. He wouldn't let me post that because in his mind, one isn't enough. He wants to be able to do like 5.
I love that.
He grew up on a farm, a guy, so he's tough. He's a trades worker his whole life, and he's spent an hour. I love it. And Larry is emphatic about how I will be training him until he's dead. My goal is to keep him alive for a very, very long time. But I know how powerful and essential it is for his physical and his emotional well-being, especially at his age, to be active in doing this. And I understand that the experience that we share is critical for him to want to come back. So, the fact he is comfortable paying me my hourly rate and he sees enormous amount of value in it, to think for a second, like, I know there are trainers out there who feel almost guilty for taking money for that hour. Are you fucking kidding me? that's probably the best way a lot of your clients could ever spend their money, if you're turning around and giving them that value of the experience. You mentioned imposter syndrome, and here's my take on imposter syndrome. If the listeners here are trainers who are up and coming, doing it for a little while or a few years, and you're feeling imposter syndrome, every person who is successful in the industry, who has any sort of conscience or credibility, has gone through imposter syndrome and probably still do. The people that you're looking up to and idolizing, or like what I would call household names in our corner of the universe, have experienced it. And I treat it as a sign that someone cares and wants to get better. You're not going to have all the answers. 10 years into it, I'm still reading training, nutrition, and psychology and writing stuff voraciously because I want to learn more and be better at all this stuff. So I don't see imposter syndrome as anything other than a really good sign that you care and that you're on the right track.
I've always thought that too with imposter syndrome. I know that he wrote about it briefly in The War of Art, the Stephen Pressfield book, where I remember that was one of the first times you got it there.
Right there.
Hell yeah.
Nice.
I love it. Yeah.
That was one of the first books for me where I was, when I read it and I felt that feeling where I'd never read a book before that I could actually feel application, where I was like, I can do this. These things I can use. And it felt so good. And it was kind of like mental breakthroughs. And each chapter was like, yeah, I see that. I feel that. And I remember him talking about imposter syndrome. And I can't remember if he mentions it in that chapter or not, but he may have alluded to it, where it's like kind of what you said, where it's like, it's a positive indicator. So it's like, oh, you're feeling imposter syndrome. Good. You're probably doing what you should be doing. Like, because what would I say? Like gurus and charlatans don't experience it. Right.
Yeah, we assume anyway. I mean, who knows?
Right. Yeah.
Who knows where it takes, a good person off into, being a charlatan. I'm guessing that Dr. Jason Fung, what is he, a nephrologist, kidney specialist, that's writing nutrition stuff. He's the guy who inspired the snake guy, who's local here in Edmonton. But we can thank Jason Fung for the snake guy. I digress. I'm sure at some point or other, Dr. Oz and Dr. Fung, thought of themselves as helping people, and who knows? I mean, maybe they still think they're doing a good job, but they're on that direction. But like I said, complaining about them other than having a good laugh is a complete waste of our time. Mm-hmm. And you better be doing a really good job of being better. Learn from them. What are they doing well? Don't be a charlatan, but otherwise learn from how they deliver messages that engage people.
I think that's a good way to look at it, and kind of capping that off. But I've always looked at it as well, where I agree with you on that, but also looking at them like understanding that most people, because it's easy to dehumanize people like that sometimes, particularly when we have these arguments and you go, they're doing so much harm, I hate them. Or you might not say that, but you'll feel that. And you're like, wait, do I feel hate for this person I don't even know? And then it's like, and then you almost have to remind yourself. And I think this is a good way to look at it. It's more keeps yourself at peace as well, where you're like, again, kind of what you said, where it's like, they're probably think they're helping people. So it's like, they're not malicious. They're probably doing their best. It's just not right. And that's, it could be worse. They're not malicious. And I think when you do that, you go, okay, so they're not that different from me then in a lot of ways, because they're doing their best. We disagree on what that is. And then you kind of rehumanize them a bit, I think.
I like the point about dehumanizing. And if anyone's read any Brene Brown work, if I had to recommend one author that someone should just binge on all of her stuff, it would probably be Brene Brown. It's about guilt, vulnerability, shame, empathy, all this sort of stuff. I've grown as a person reading this. It's helped me in my personal relationships. It's helping me in coaching. But in one of her books, I can't remember which one, she mentions dehumanizing language. And it goes into a lot of this political polarization you see. You see dehumanizing language being used on both extreme sides of the political spectrum. And like you said, dehumanizing language is a very dangerous thing. I mean, if you want to go to the extreme examples, this is how the Nazis described Jews and Gypsies, in the 1930s and 1940s, to be able to pull off the horrors of the Holocaust. And someone might think, well, that's a straw man extreme example. Well, it's a slippery slope when you start referring to people as rats or other subhuman language, because I can't remember what the word is in German, but there's a word that literally means subhuman or less than human, which was the word to describe people that were ultimately persecuted. So I know this is a momentarily heavy topic, and I apologize for kind of going there, but I think the language that we use, especially when we think about ideological camps, let's say you get the low carbers or, the carnivore dieters, whatever, and I like make fun of them. I with care, you can have some fun with the extreme nature of people who are carnivore dieters, but I think it's always wise to be a little thoughtful about the language we use, because I don't think that I wouldn't advocate anyone eat carnivore diet, because I think long-term there's going to be some colon health issues there. But let's use keto, for example. I've got a client who does keto and she likes it and she enjoys it. And while it's not my first go-to, I support her and I maintain trust with her because she loves coaching with me. And I don't need to score ideological points or feel like I've won by critiquing or tearing down or saying how stupid keto is. I think it's not a sustainable approach for most people. And I think in most cases it does function as a fad diet. But just like intermittent fasting or veganism or anything else, and someone might balk the idea that veganism is a fad diet. It absolutely functions as one in the hands of some people who are not doing it for the right reasons. And there's no one-size-fits-all diet. I think anyone who's listening should probably kind of know that. We know that calories are still the most important part of the equation. But if you really just want to make all your media about tearing down and criticizing other people, like, again, you can have a little fun at the expense of CrossFitters, but if all you're doing is shitting on CrossFitters, yes, they don't have the same sense of humor about picking on them the way that powerlifters or bodybuilders do. I don't know. I think that stuff gets really tired, and I know it's not the sort of message that resonates with me and I'm going to be engaged with. My bandwidth to engage with other people's media, have someone on the podcast as a guest or whatever they're writing, is very limited. So, and if I see these sort of themes or going back extremes like dehumanizing language on their social media, I see that someone's never going to be a podcast guest. I'm sorry. And making my podcast is not the be all end all. I'm not Rogan, but it might be something that there's been a big rush for a lot of coaches wanting to get hired with companies like Stronger You and Macros Inc. So I'm friends with the owners of both companies, and they both for referral recommendations, and I've actually hooked them up with a number of coaches. But there are people that I would never endorse or recommend because of the type of things that they like to engage in or say on their social media. So I don't know. I keep coming back to that whole thing, but I think here's the other thing. Be really thoughtful in the type of stuff that you're engaging in and that you're saying and sharing on social media. And I don't mean you can't be controversial. I mean, yes, you can take a position on a diet, or you can take a position. If you want to argue about whether sumo deadlifting is cheating or not, I don't give a shit. Like, that's fine. Like, go ahead. Or bench arching. You guys want to argue about that stuff? Great. If your whole brand is that bench arching is a super valid thing and that everybody should do it, okay, sure. See how that works out for you. Go for it, right? But, otherwise, I think be kind of thoughtful when it comes to engaging in really extreme positions. And again, I'll use the vaccine thing. I think most of us, I hope, would agree that they're probably a really, really important health advance in our society. I've got a feeling there'll be a few listeners who probably aren't so comfortable with the idea. But as a personal trainer and a fitness professional, I'm not going to be blasting that message on social media, because there might be potential clients who are really fucking awesome people who need to lose weight or get stronger, who are not evil, but they just happen to be less trusting of vaccines. Fuck, who knows, maybe then they post anti-vax shit. I'm not a fan of that. But I'd rather focus on how I can help them. And who knows, maybe if I build a relationship with them long enough and expose them enough other, evidence-based stuff, I still don't think it's my job to try to convince them vaccines are okay. But who knows, maybe you can pull them back from the edge of all that conspiracy theorist shit by just giving them other nutrition evidence-based stuff. I don't understand why trainers just can't stop themselves from fighting those battles that it's not your scope of practice. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. It might momentarily feel good. It's going to cause you way more stress and headaches in the long run.
Well,
because human beings want to be right. I think that's the problem. If they feel like they can't be right, or someone's arguing with them, and it just eats them alive, and you're like, again, you shouldn't have enough time in your day for that to be upsetting.
If you need to win an argument or a discussion with a client who believes different than what you believe, that's going to cost you a lot of money. And if you do it systematically with a lot of clients, you're not going to do anything in this industry. I don't care what. I mean, again, I'm Canadian. Our political spectrum isn't quite as extreme as the American one, but as Canadian clients, I don't care if they're far left or far right, as long as there's no hate. As long as, and I won't deal with hateful shit or intolerant shit. I got a lot of clients who are LGBTQ plus. So I thankfully have never had an openly hateful, person towards that group. If I did, I couldn't work with them. There are lines, right? Or someone who was, I knew was, I had one client who I think was a little goofy when it came to some sexual harassment stuff that went on in the workplace. And while he swore vehemence, I saw weird interactions with some of the female members at the gym. And I just kind of like quietly just let him go because it's like that. Well, I'm uncomfortable here. So there are certain things like that. Those are hills to die on. But by and large, I don't really care what a client wants to believe. I don't care if they're a Bible thumping Christian or whatever. As long as there's no hate, I want to help them. I want to get down to making their life better, improving their quality of life. If they're a really good person in their heart, don't care what their belief system is.
Well, Andrew, here, I think this question will perfectly surmise everything you were saying, and I think it will kind of bottleneck everything we've been talking about to one beautiful point. And I really want to get your thought on it. How do I want to word this? What drives you? What's the passion to be doing what you're doing? And like, it can be in regards to your social media following. And I imagine they tie together in some respect. You're trying to grow a following so you can grow a business and help more people. What drives you? What's the passion? What's the driving force? What's the engine?
It's a number of things that are highly related. I mean, number one, I like what I do. I am energized by the time I get to spend with my clientele. They enrich my day. I look forward to it. I enjoy the podcast. I enjoy writing, and I've grown to enjoy the idea creation and consistency behind social media. I go to sleep every night in my own bed with a clear conscience, feeling like I'm doing something good that enhances and enriches lives. So I feel great about it. I earn a very comfortable living doing it. And I feel great about that. It allows me to take a few trips a year. It allows me to drive a vehicle I feel good about. I own my own home. I was able to put a full, gym in the basement during COVID. So that way I was able to keep, working away and training for myself. I have the finance if I want to go out and acquire anything that I need shy of, a new sports car or getting cash, I'm probably more than okay. So it checks a lot of those boxes, but it's fulfilling. I like what I do. I have a Bachelor of Commerce degree, like I mentioned, and the office suit and tie, banker job that I once had, I hated that. I couldn't stand it. I owned a martini bar when I was in Newfoundland, where I grew up before I moved out here. And the late nights and the party lifestyle and all that sort of stuff, that stuff is toxic and draining real fast too. I wouldn't want to continue to work and be in that world. This is my favorite thing I've ever done. I can see myself doing it well into, retirement years. I have no intention of ever kind of retiring, and I don't want to rush to become an online business guru coach like Jordan Side likes to make fun of them, and get away from the gym floor by the time I'm 50, so I'm already 42, or spend all my time playing golf or anything like that. That stuff doesn't motivate me. I want to create, share, and yes, I actually enjoy the idea of brand recognition and prestige in our industry. And there's nothing wrong with being motivated, at least to some degree, by that. That can be a driving force. I think you have to approach it with authenticity and integrity at all times. But it is fulfilling to see, me be asked and included in one of John Goodman's books, or, my articles up on Teen Nation, which is always sort of a pipe dream. I never imagined that, like, oh, that's for people who are like Tony Gelicourt and Eric Cressy and Ben Bruno and Dean Somerset. That's not for me, the gym floor in the trench trainers. Well, all of a sudden now I'm there, and someone may be listening to this who's early in their career might look at that and go, oh, this guy on this podcast, he's of this tier. I could never attain that. No, like, I've actually detailed the stuff that I've done along the way to go from that gym floor, I'm still on the gym floor, but to all these respected brand things that we have. So there's no reason why you can't get to that stuff even faster than I did, after the many years I've been in the industry. So if that's a dream and something you're interested in, develop relationships, get out there, create, be consistent. Don't think there's any shortcuts to it. You got to put in the work and the time, and don't put it ahead of the actual relationship and the work on the floor with your clients. Because all this other cool stuff that I get to do now is because I've had years and years and years of client work, regular clientele that, love coming to spend time with me and are happy to pay a lot of money to come and do it. They do it enthusiastically. So again, it's incredibly fulfilling, and there's all those dimensions to it that motivates me. I'm not one of these people that wants to jump out and become a firefighter or a paramedic or got scared. I'm working on something that'll hopefully get published soon, where I know there's an exodus from the industry. There's a lot of people who are probably going to try to get out because before COVID even happened, and they're always struggling with their consistency with their clientele, their income. They're always worried about it. That was before. Now things are a little different. So if you are someone who got through it okay, and you didn't have your whole business wiped out and you're still holding on, guess what? That's God, I pray, that's the worst thing that's going to happen to your career, into the foreseeable future. If you survived it, you're probably fine. If you're really passionate about it, head down, work hard, take good care of the clients you have in front of you, work for a referral business, build up your business, you're going to be okay. Add an online complement to it because it makes you a little more resilient. And then do whatever the hell else in our world you enjoy. And maybe if you can make a bit of extra money and diversify your income along the way, you're just that much more robust, worst case scenario.
Amazing. Well, Andrew, I have one final question. Now, I feel like you've answered 50 times, but I'm curious to see what comes to your mind right off what your knee-jerk reaction to this question is. If you could tell every person on this planet one thing, what would it be?
Be nicer to each other. It
Done.
sounds really fucking cliche. That whole, you don't know what someone else is going through, but honestly, you don't. I know Mark Fisher shares this sentiment, but I know it comes from somewhere else. It's like the concept of unconditional positive regard. Imagine you driving in the morning, and it goes back to dehumanizing too. You know how like the person in front of you is a person, but the person in that car that's driving too slow is a fucking idiot in your way, right? To get your blood boiling. First of all, it's beyond your control. Just take a big deep breath and don't let that affect you. That is someone who is trying to get somewhere. Maybe they're not as good a driver as you are. Maybe they got kids at home. Kids like them. They think they're a good person and they're not trying to fuck with your day. They're genuinely not trying to ruin your day. Only you and your attitude as a driver or any other context actually make your day worse. So, try to approach everything with trying to be nice. And guess what? I could be a terrible asshole to people who genuinely warranted when they are awful people. I've heard racist shit at parties where I've gotten really nasty and confrontational. My girlfriend is Jamaican background, so I don't like hearing racist crap. But other than that, if you just go about the world and if everybody's interactions with you make their day just a little bit better, that's a really good feeling. Right? And maybe it's a quiet compliment. Me and my girlfriend were walking out of the gym the other day, and she sees another girl walking out, and she makes mention. She's like, "Oh, I want to ask that girl about, her tattoos are really nice." So I call out to this girl, I'm like, "Hey, she wants to know about your tattoos." And my girlfriend was sort of embarrassed, but they got talking. The other girl was really nice, and my girlfriend complimented her on how wonderful her tattoos were, and they had a little chit chat, and then we went on. And she was like jokingly mad that I did that. I'm like, no, you probably made that girl's day a whole lot better. So if you can go about your day and leave a trail of better energy around all the people that you encounter, and maybe it's simply being polite and smiling at, the clerk at the store who probably is dealing with a bit more stress than usual right now, cooped up behind a piece of plexiglass and wearing a mask all day. And, some people aren't as nice. Sometimes that smile and a little bit of warmth, you don't know that person at the end of a long day, they're tired, they're counting on this paycheck, for whatever. And sometimes just that little bit of positivity can be a little break in an otherwise, shitty experience. And if you add that up over everything, honestly, the world would be a whole lot better. Because if you pay attention to media, social media, and guess what? Those are also designed to be sensationalized and stir up negative emotion. I still think tune that crap out. I don't think it's helping you at all. But I think the world is a lot better place than the way that the media makes it seem. And just instead of just running your mouth and patting yourself on the back about things that are sensational, go actually do it when there's no camera on you, when there's no likes to get for whatever you've said, and be a decent human being when no one can see it, when it's inconvenient.
Yeah. Well said. Well, to pair it, mine and Tim's friend Kevin Boyd, he was talking to us about his CrossFit gym, and he goes in, and it was Monday morning, and it was cold, and you're about to do some work that you don't really want to do, but you get it done, and it makes you feel better after. And he would go, "Oh, you Mondays, like, it's so hard." And everyone else is like, "Yeah, Mondays is so hard, it's so terrible." And then one day he goes, "Oh, it was so. Everyone agrees with me. It sucks." He's like, "I'm gonna go in tomorrow and go. Can't wait. We're gonna crush this workout. It's gonna be amazing." And everyone parroted what he said, doing, right down the line. Everyone was loving it. So it's amazing how much reach you can have. You can infect people with this positivity, and all you have to do is be nice. That's it. How it's so simple. It couldn't be easier.
I choose with my social media to try to have fun and positive messages, right? I mean, I'm not above, thoughtful criticism of things that I think are genuinely worth, thinking critically about, but it's got to be well thought out. And I certainly don't like the idea of just tearing people out. I actually did take some pot shots at Jillian Michaels on my story recently. I do. That was just because she's a dumbass, and there's something in an article about her telling people, "Hey, don't go to gyms," because she caught COVID. Meanwhile, she caught COVID because she had a friend in her home do her hair for her. Meanwhile, you sell home gym videos. And plus, like, my idea of screaming at obese people and putting it on television, that's not
Right.
the idea of
Yeah.
good into the world.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll use an example of if you're really, really positive, you can pick your spots to have a little fun, or actually take a pot shot at someone who I think is actually negative. But leave it at that. Just something very, very quick and surgical, and then get right back to positive messages. People are drawn to positive messages. They might get pulled into the negativity of media, social media, but they will be drawn to and engage with positivity. So.
Definitely. Couldn't agree more. Tim, do you have anything to add, say,
No, that
comment
was
on?
great. I really
Yeah.
appreciate your mindset and attitude, Andrew. And we haven't discussed in person before, but or I mean, this isn't in person either, but it's always been over social media. And this is your mindset and your philosophy definitely comes through. Everything you described during this discussion, it definitely comes through on your social media. So I think that is worth saying. You are succeeding in that way. So I think that's important that, I'm sure you already know that, but just, I think it is being perceived the way you want it to be. So
I appreciate it. I hope you guys can hear me. I just got a little unstable connection notice.
you're all
But
good.
you don't automatically just assume it, right? I mean, feedback is really, really helpful. You never want to stray off course. I can certainly make mistakes with the way that I say things. I try to always hold myself very accountable, and be very, very thoughtful in how I deliver messages and not be reactionary or, again, like I said, consistently or overtly negative. So one thing is your perception, another thing is how it comes off. I was reading a book about marketing, and it's positioning in the marketplace. Your positioning is not what you say you are. Your positioning is where the consumer puts you and thinks of you. So just because you're thinking something, you're trying to achieve something, doesn't actually mean that message is coming across effectively. So, if you've got people that you trust but are willing to give you critical feedback, ask them, are you hitting the right note with your social media messaging? And if you are straying too far into some dimensions that are actually affecting you negatively, I hope you've got people around who will actually let you know that, and then be grateful for it. Don't be offended by it.
Absolutely. That's just another one. That was just another answer to the question. If you wanted to tell everyone on this planet one thing, another one. That was an amazing little nugget. This can be so easy to grab a little sound clip and put it on Instagram because you had a million of them, Andrew, and I couldn't appreciate you more. I can't wait I'm not going to edit this by any means, but I just want to listen to it again. I'm excited to go through and just listen to it again, write down a few things. Definitely going to write down some of the names in the books that you were talking about as well, because I feel inspired. I'm sad that it's late and I can't go do anything really. I want to go run a marathon or something, but I want to be the first to thank you so much for coming on, Andrew. This has been, again, incredibly insightful. If you ever wondered if you didn't come across, articulate, you're definitely articulate. I'm not doing it right now, but you definitely are you're super articulate. The way you frame your points it's amazing. So I hope everyone enjoys this, as I imagine Tim and I have immensely, for sure.
Well, thank you. I'll say this really quickly. So anyone who's listening, give these guys obviously put a lot of thought into this, and they're taking their time out of their evenings to bring me on. And while I appreciate it, and actually I'd love it if you go and message me and follow my social media, my Instagram, Andrew Coates Fitness. I would love it if you guys are following them. And if you haven't given them a review yet, seriously, like if you took the time to listen to this and you're getting all this value, go give these guys a 5-star review. Seriously, like that's the sort of thing that it doesn't take any fucking time. Like if you're driving, okay, cool. Like set up voice memo to do it. Okay. Remember to do it. But like, don't just like try to do it in the middle of driving, please. For the love of God, don't do that. But seriously, if you're just there cooking or whatever, it's going to take you maybe a minute of your time to do something that these guys are really going to value a lot. Because there's a lot of competition out there in the podcast space. There's new people starting podcasts all the time. And, we've got more and more and more to spread our attention around. So if you're someone who's been engaged with them, you've already committing like that much time and energy because you like what they're doing, the guests they're bringing on. Go do that little kindness for them. That one little thing that makes someone's day better is going to go a long way. It's such a little gesture on your part, takes no time and effort, but it's going to really, affect them in a positive way. So I'd say go do that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yeah, Andrew, thank you so much, man. That was incredible. And everyone definitely go, again, Andrew Coates Fitness. Everything's going to be in the show notes below, or I guess not below. You can't really say that. Wherever you can find the show notes, you're going to find that. And definitely listen to the Lift Free and Diet Hard podcast as well. And that's pretty much it. Anything else there, Tim?
That's it. Andrew, thank you so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate this.
Thanks. Okay. Run my mouth for a while about my ideas. I do that on my podcast.
Love it. That's what this is for. Ramblings.
That's it.
Cool.
Well, thanks again for listening, everybody, and we'll catch you on the next one.